Chapter 10. Awakening Emotions. Aftermath of the battle on Zarnox left Rook, Nakia, and Stacy, along with the remaining conscripts, in a state of weariness mixed with a sense of relief. They had survived the harrowing conflict in the Bolok system, but at a high cost. Half of their comrades had fallen, and the scars of the battle were not just physical, but deeply emotional as well. Returning to their ship was with a sense of somber reflection hung over them. The discovery that their implants had more capabilities than they had been told, particularly the recently deactivated healing feature, was a source of anger and frustration. This revelation had come too late for many of their fellow soldiers, and it was a bitter pill to swallow. As the conscripts gathered in the common area of the ship, heading towards the Krynnis cluster, the losses they had suffered in the Bolok system weighed heavily on them, and the recent revelation about the healing capabilities of their implants added a layer of bitterness to their discussions. Rook leaned against the wall, his gaze fixed on the space outside the viewport. I can't believe they kept the healing tech from us all this time. How many did we lose who could have been saved? Nakia, sitting at a nearby table, replied softly, Too many, Rook. It's like we're just tools to them, expendable. Stacy joined in, her voice tinged with anger. And now they've deactivated it again. Just like that. As if our lives mean nothing. The conversation was interrupted by a new conscript, a young man named Jonas, who approached hesitantly. Do you think it'll be the same in the Krynnis cluster? More battles, more deaths? Rook looked at Jonas, seeing in him the uncertainty and fear they all felt when they first became conscripts. It's likely, but we've survived this far. We'll keep surviving. Nakia added, trying to offer some comfort. We look out for each other. That's how we get through this. The ship shuddered slightly as it prepared to enter the Rosen Bridge, a strategic asset, enabling the Drixarians to project their power across vast distances. However, this method of travel had its limitations. It could only be utilized to reach systems that shared specific spatial connections, nodes in the cosmic web that the Drixarians had mapped and exploited for their campaigns. The conscripts braced themselves, the familiar sensation of warping reality enveloping them as they traveled through the cosmic tunnel, emerging into the Krynnis cluster. The reality of their situation settled in once again. They were far from home, fighting in a war they didn't choose, for a cause they didn't believe in. We do what we must, Stacy said, standing up. For each other, not for them. The conscripts nodded in agreement, a silent pact forming between them. They would fight, not for the Drixarians, but for their survival, and for the hope of one day reclaiming their freedom. Now, their mission was taking them beyond the Bolok system to a newly discovered destination, the Krynnis cluster. The journey through the Rosen Bridge was a surreal experience. As the ship activated the bridge, reality seemed to warp and stretch around them. For a moment, time and space lost their meaning, and the conscripts found themselves hurtling through a tunnel of swirling lights and colors, a visual representation of the ship traversing the folded space. When they emerged on the other side, they were in the Krynnis cluster, a system of unclaimed worlds that the Drixarians intended to conquer. The conscripts, still reeling from the loss and revelations of their previous mission, braced themselves for what lay ahead. The Krynnis cluster represented a new chapter in their service under the Drixarian rule, a continuation of the endless cycle of conquest and conflict. As the ship approached its first target within the cluster, Rook, Nakia, and Stacy gathered with the others, preparing for the upcoming docking of ships. They were veterans of many conflicts, soldiers molded by their experiences, yet each new mission brought with it a renewed sense of uncertainty. This journey to the Krynnis cluster was a reminder of their small place in the vast universe, pawns in the grand scheme of an empire whose appetite for expansion knew no bounds. As they readied themselves for the battle, they carried with them the memories of their fallen comrades and the harsh lessons learned in the Bolok system. Docking of the two Drixarian ships was an event that drew the attention of many conscripts, especially those who had not experienced such an occurrence before. The conscripts gathered to watch as the massive structures aligned and connected, seamlessly forming one colossal ship. For many, it was a revelation to see another Turd-Ysseys ship, having spent months in service without encountering any others. Rook, standing among the newer conscripts, shared his knowledge. In my years of service, I've only witnessed this kind of connection 3 times. It's rare because the Turd-Ysseys spread their ships far and wide, always searching for new systems to exploit. A young conscript, awed by the sight, asked, "Have you met conscripts from other ships?" Rook nodded. "Once I met a conscript who had been in service for centuries. Our implants stop us from aging once our brains fully develop at 25. It's how they keep us effective for so long." Curious murmurs rippled through the group. The idea of living for centuries locked in unending service was both fascinating and horrifying. Sensing their curiosity, Rook offered, "I can share the memory of that encounter if you wish to see it." Several conscripts nodded eagerly, and Rook established a mental link with them. Using the communication capabilities of their implants, he broadcasted the memory. The conscripts who accepted the link experienced Rook's memory vividly, as if they were living it themselves. This sharing of memories was another facet of their implants, one that allowed for silent communication and the transfer of experiences. As the memory ended, Nakia turned to Rook, her eyes wide with newfound understanding. "I had no idea our service could be so extensive." Stacy, having seen ship connections before and familiar with Rook's stories, was preoccupied with her holographic system screen. She was sifting through various menus and options, searching for a way to reactivate their healing implants or uncover other hidden functions. Her focus was intense, driven by the hope of finding something that could give them an edge, or at the very least, more autonomy over their fates. As the 2 groups of conscripts, led by Rook and Cora, respectively, converged in the large open area formed by the union of the 2 Turd-Ysseys ships, the atmosphere was charged with curiosity. Cora's group, meticulously selected and systematically trained, stood in disciplined formation, their demeanor reflecting their rigorous conditioning. In contrast, Rook's group, survivors of numerous battles and losses, held a more relaxed, if somewhat weary, stance. Both groups observed each other, taking in the differences that their varied experiences had etched into their postures and expressions. They awaited instructions, standing amidst the technological marvel that was the merged ships. Once Rook and Cora received confirmation via their implants that the ship connection was secure and stable, they relayed the permission for their troops to move about freely. It was a brief respite from the strict regimen that usually governed their lives. Cora, flanked by 2 of her most loyal conscripts, made her way through the area. One was the young man who had been placed uncomfortably close to her during their initial abduction in the Blue Beam transport capsule. The other was a muscular male whose physique suggested a life dedicated to physical training before his conscription. They moved with her, protective and vigilant, almost like bodyguards despite the lack of any immediate threat. Rook, accompanied by Nakia and Stacy, approached Cora. They recognized her as the human commander of the other group through the information relayed by their Turd-Ysseys tech. The meeting of the 2 leaders was a significant moment, a rare instance of interaction between conscripts from different factions of the Turd-Ysseys forces. "Commander Cora," Rook greeted, extending a nod of respect. His tone carried the weight of shared experience, an acknowledgement of the burdens they both bore as leaders. Cora responded with a nod, her expression unreadable. "Commander Rook," she replied, her voice steady. The presence of Nakia and Stacy was noted with a brief glance, an unspoken recognition of their roles in Rook's group. Nakia found herself unexpectedly captivated by Cora. There was something about Cora's presence, her aura of strength mixed with an undeniable beauty, that resonated deeply with Nakia. Even in the stark, unyielding environment of the Turd-Ysseys ship, Cora's allure was undeniable, drawing Nakia's attention. Lost in her thoughts and emotions, Nakia was jolted back to reality by a discreet nudge from Stacy. Leaning closer, Stacy whispered, "You're transmitting everything." It was a startling reminder. In her fascination with Cora, Nakia had forgotten that she hadn't closed the mental link that was open to share Rook's memories. Her feelings and thoughts were still broadcasting, accessible to anyone linked with her. A wave of embarrassment washed over her as she realized her private infatuation was not so private after all. Nakia's cheeks flushed with a deep red, a stark contrast to her dark skin, as she hurriedly closed the mental link, cutting off the unintended broadcast of her feelings and thoughts. She returned her attention to Cora, only to find their eyes locking in a moment of unspoken understanding. In Cora's eyes, Nakia saw a glimmer of acknowledgement, a hint that Cora had indeed received the unintended transmission. The moment was fleeting, but it was enough to confirm Nakia's fears. Their interaction was a stark reminder of the intrusive nature of the implants and the loss of privacy they entailed. For Nakia, it was a moment of vulnerability, exposing a part of herself she hadn't intended to share, especially not in such an unguarded and public manner. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, the encounter also revealed the human aspect that still persisted beneath the surface of their conscripted lives. Emotions, attractions, and connections were not entirely eradicated, even during their service to the Drexarian will. As the groups continued their interaction, Nakia managed to regain her composure, but the encounter with Cora left an indelible mark on her. The two groups of conscripts, though different in their composition and demeanor, shared a common bond of forced service and the scars of battle. The open area between the ships became a space of subtle camaraderie, a rare opportunity for these soldiers to interact outside the confines of their designated missions. As they conversed, exchanging information and experiences, they gained insights into each other's journeys since their abduction. For many, it was a chance to connect with others who understood the unique and harrowing path they had been forced to walk. As the Drexarian fleet journeyed towards the next target within the Crinus cluster, the conscripts were reminded of the limitations of their interstellar travel. While capable of traversing vast distances between solar systems and galaxies through the Rosen Bridge, their movements from planet to planet within a system were bound by the constraints of sublight speed travel. This slower pace provided an unexpected respite, a period where the relentless momentum of their missions paused, giving the conscripts time to reflect and interact. A time where Nakia and Cora found themselves gravitating towards each other. The initial awkwardness stemming from Nakia's unintended emotional broadcast gradually gave way to genuine connection. Cora, who had become hardened and detached due to her experiences in battle, found herself unexpectedly opening up in Nakia's presence. Nakia's empathetic nature and her ability to listen without judgment provided Cora with a sense of comfort and safety she hadn't realized she was missing. As they spent more time together, Cora began to rediscover aspects of her personality that had been suppressed under the weight of her role as a conscript commander. Meanwhile, Cora's two constant companions, whom she had come to rely on for support and protection, began to sense a shift in her demeanor. Marcus, the young man who had been uncomfortably close to Cora during their initial abduction, and Hector, the imposing figure whose past life as a bodybuilder was still evident in his physique, were both loyal to Cora. However, Cora, not wanting to appear vulnerable or distracted in their presence, especially around Nakia, found reasons to send them on various errands or tasks away from her as the ship continued its journey through the stars, and she found herself experiencing a resurgence of emotion she had willingly suppressed. Her feelings for Nakia grew stronger, evolving from a simple attraction to something deeper and more passionate. This emotional awakening was both exhilarating and daunting for Cora, who had become accustomed to maintaining a facade of control and detachment even in her previous life. Nakia, for her part, reciprocated Cora's feelings, drawn to the complexity and strength she saw in the commander. Their growing bond became a source of solace and strength, a rare light in the darkness of their conscripted lives. Time they spent together during the journey allowed them to explore their feelings and learn more about each other's pasts, hopes, and fears. It was a period of emotional growth for both, providing a much-needed respite from the constant demands of their roles as soldiers. As the Drexarian fleet arrived at its next destination within the Krinis cluster, a sense of inevitability settled over Cora and Nakia. The brief interlude in their journey, which had allowed their relationship to blossom, was coming to an end. They both understood that the demands of their service would soon pull them back into the harsh reality of their roles as conscripts. In the moments before their imminent separation, Cora and Nakia found a secluded spot on the ship, away from the prying eyes of their fellow soldiers. There they shared a passionate and heartfelt conversation, fully aware that it might be their last. Cora, holding Nakia's hands tightly, spoke with a fervor that belied her usual composure. "These past few days with you have given me something I thought I'd lost. Hope. A reason to keep fighting." Nakia, her eyes reflecting the depth of her emotions, replied, "I never expected to find someone like you in all this chaos. You've shown me that there's still beauty and love in this universe, no matter how dark it gets." They spoke of their dreams, their fears, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. Each word was imbued with the intensity of their feelings, a testament to the bond they had formed. As Rook's group was replenished with conscripts from Cora's unit, the time for parting drew near. Cora and Nakia stole away for a few precious moments alone, cherishing the fleeting connection they shared. "I don't know if we'll ever see each other again," Cora whispered, her voice tinged with sadness. Nakia, her heart heavy, responded, "Let's promise to survive, to find each other again, no matter what." They embraced, holding on to each other as if trying to memorize the feel of their presence. It was a moment of profound connection, a promise made without words. Reluctantly, Cora returned to her group and ship. The two massive vessels began to disengage, the passage between them slowly closing. Cora and Nakia stood at the threshold, their eyes locked until the very last moment, each silently conveying a multitude of unspoken promises. As the ships separated, their mental communication link was severed, cutting off their direct connection. Yet the bond they had formed remained unbroken, a source of strength and resilience in the trials to come. Rook, addressing his group, informed them of their next mission in another system, since this one had thus far to provide little resistance, a stark contrast to the battles they had previously faced. As the ships moved apart, charting their courses through the vastness of space, Cora and Nakia carried with them the memory of their time together. Their farewell was not an end, but a promise of hope in a future where they might one day be reunited.